Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Catherine Aura. I'm a business and PR strategist for artists and creative entrepreneurs, founder of The Artist Entrepreneur. And I'm happy to be here today because we have a special guest who said yes immediately when I asked her. She's very generous, and I think we're going to learn a lot from her because we get a lot of questions from artists about how to work with art consultants. So we have the honor of having with us today Leslie Palmer Ross. She's art director at Artforce, and she's going to share with us how a art consulting company works and what are the best practices and how artists who want to include working with art consultants in their business model can do so. So first of all, thank you, Leslie, and welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So maybe we can start by you telling us a little more about yourself, how and why you decided to become an art consultant, and also we'd love to know more about what Artforce does more precisely.
Sure. So I was an art history major in college. And when I finished school, then I started working in galleries. And through that process, decided that I wanted to do some more schooling. And so I went back and got a master's degree in arts administration. So I have the art knowledge, but also the business knowledge, which really is a good combination in the work that I do. And Artforce, we're a full-service art consulting firm in Northeast Minneapolis. And so we provide art and art services to pretty much any space. We don't market to single-family residential, but we market to public spaces, so that would include businesses of all sizes. We work with Fortune 500 companies. We work with small business and medium-sized business. We do hospitality projects, so hotels, restaurants occasionally, but more hotels, healthcare, so lots of hospitals, clinics, multifamily housing. That's really a big sector right now, at least here locally, that a lot of apartment buildings and condos are being built. And so doing the work for the public spaces there. And then we also do some work with government, like with county agencies, facilities. We have Artwork, a rotating program, which is a little bit different program, subscription program at the Minneapolis Convention Center. So it's a huge space that, brings in conventions and events, and we have art by local artists there. So we do, we really work to connect the artist with the client. And our model, which is not all, when you think of a business that sells art for artists, traditionally it would be a gallery model, where oftentimes there's an agreement with between the artist and the gallery to represent the work, to do shows for them, etc. And art consultants typically work with a wider variety of artists, and really part of our process with our clients is really to listen to our clients and what they're looking for and what their goals are and what their brand is also, because we're dealing with a company. So what sort of environment are they trying to create for their clients, for their patients, for their guests, for their staff, which is really important too, that we all want to work in an environment that is pleasing and it can increase productivity, all of those sorts of things. So we try to listen to what our client is looking for and then make suggestions about what might be appropriate for them in terms of art based on what their goals are. And sometimes the clients know, they might even know a specific artist, but oftentimes they might have some idea. They might think, okay, we're really looking for photography, or, and maybe we like black and white photography. Or one of the trends in hospitality right now is not framed images, but they're really looking for images that are printed on substrates that are going directly on a wall or even on a piece of furniture. And so we've had clients, hospitality clients, who have come to us who have said, we're looking for images, but yeah, we don't want anything, we don't want a canvas, we don't want anything, printed. We want to buy an image that then we can reproduce, and sometimes even edit. In terms of this one client, they wanted everything to be black, white, gray, or red. So there were some images that they liked that the originals were more colors than that. But so then if they were interested in an image, then I went to the artist and said, they're interested in this image, but are you all right selling the rights to use it and also to make these changes to the piece? So maybe instead of blue and orange, it's red and gray. And so those sorts of things. So I'm kind of getting off on a tangent, but just...
It's very interesting because as part of your job, you really have to understand both point of views, right? You need to understand what your client wants, right? But you're also a broker with the artist and seeing which artist would be, maybe depending on what type of work it is, would be a good fit, but also willing to do the specifics, that because not all artists would be willing to do the example you just gave here, right?
Right. And when I meet with artists, one of the things that I always ask is, are you willing to do site-specific work? And that could mean a lot of different things, because some artists, which I totally respect, want to do, make all the decisions about the work that they create and, and follow their path and then try to sell what they've created. Whereas other artists either are open to or really are challenged and excited by somebody saying, hey, what about this idea? And then, collaborating with the consultant and the client to go in that direction. I feel like it's really our job as consultants to know which clients also are ones who will understand the commissioning process and understand that you're not going to see the final product until you see the final product. And, you have to be comfortable with that uncertainty a little bit, even though a lot of artists are very good at, within their own body of work, their usual body of work. If you just say, for instance, well, I really like this existing piece, but instead of a 40 by 60, I need a series of 3 30 by 30s, and doing something that's similar. It's original work, so it's always going to be different, but within the same vein. I also don't believe that I should ask artists to get outside the integrity of their typical work unless they're really interested in that, which some artists are. They like I've never done this before, but I'm really interested in trying X. Now there's some risk there for everybody doing that, but we try not to, ask people, we try not to art direct too much, especially with fine art. If it's graphic art, it might be a little different, but if it's fine art, to let the artist really work and be motivated and inspired in the way that they usually are, because that's going to be the most successful end product when they're really engaged with it, rather than somebody saying, well, there needs to be a little yellow here or a little green here, or, that's really hard as an artist to work that way and to feel good.
So what I'm hearing is that you also have a little bit of education. There's an education component probably when you're working with your clients, because they're not used to working with artists. They don't necessarily know how to deal, or like you said earlier, like you need to trust the process, you need to understand what the artist can and cannot do. So when you're working with your clients, I'm guessing there's some education that needs to be done there as well.
Absolutely. And I think that is something that we have to remind ourselves sometimes, because we understand the process so well, but that is something that more and more we remind ourselves that not everybody understands the importance and the impact of art in a space. And so first of all, meeting with clients, sometimes it's, well, they don't know, they have no idea how much things cost. So, you know, and obviously there's a big range, but educating that way. But then why are you doing this? Why, you know, what is the benefit? And even personally, I've gone into, as a patient, I've gone into clinics where they're new and there's no art. And I say, you know, why, you know, why don't you have art? This is one of the most important places to have art, where people are stressed and they're, you know, uncomfortable, and, you know, they may not feel good and all that kind of stuff. And so it is that educational, why do it? Because art does not get put line item in budgets for construction. It's oftentimes an afterthought. And so really, we do feel like we kind of have to be evangelists to go out there and say, this is really important. And, you know, it really makes such a difference.
Yeah, and this is something that I talk with artists about a lot, because I hear often artists complaining that people, you know, aren't valuing art, don't understand the value, or they don't want to pay, right? They don't want to pay. If they don't understand the value, if they don't understand what comes into creating an artwork, how many years of experience you need. You know, when people say Picasso, you said that, like, how long did it take you to create this? Well, it took me 15 years. It took me 25 years. It took my entire life. Even if it's a drawing on a napkin that took 5 minutes, it's 25 years of experience that led me to do this drawing on a napkin in 5 minutes, right?
Exactly.
So if there's no education, and it's great that there are businesses like ArtForce that also do that, but it's also the role of artists, right, to not be upset or take it personally when people don't understand, but rather see it as an opportunity to educate.
Yes, absolutely. And I think there's a lot of people who we work with who are very educated and very experienced in their own field, but they don't have an arts education and they don't understand it. And so there's also there's a fear. And so we help, if we can develop a relationship with them and they trust us to do something that's going to be appropriate for them, that's really important. And so we can, and there isn't one right answer for any space. There's a lot of different, you know, artwork, a lot of different possibilities that would look nice. But it's helping, it's also overwhelming to people who don't have the background of, well, it could be anything. So we help kind of pare down, okay, here's some good options, and then see what they respond to. So do they like abstract painting? Do they like photography? Do they like, you know, something that's hyper realistic? Are they looking for cityscapes? You know, give them options and then see what they respond to, and that works within their space, and not the matching the sofa, you know, kind of idea, but certainly based on the architecture and the space, there's things that are going to complement that space more than others. And of course, you know, some of those, like the hotel that I referenced, they were very edgy. You know, they were looking for things that were maybe not controversial, but, you know, more contemporary. They liked street art kind of look and that sort of thing, which probably isn't going to be appropriate for a clinic or maybe a lawyer's office or something like that. So knowing those sorts of boundaries general, but also trying to push people a little too and have them think about something that maybe is beyond what they know. So that's another education part of it, is maybe it's something that they've never thought of or never been exposed to that still could work in their space.
Okay, well, that's super interesting. And now I can hear artists who are listening to this and they're like, I want to have my work in hotels. I want to have it in clinics. So,
right.
So tell us a little bit about how the process works when maybe someone stumbles upon your website, listens to this interview, says, how do I get to work with art consultants so they can show my work to hotels and clinics?
Right. So I can talk about us personally, ArtForce, and then, what other avenues there, or how other people might work. Because there are art consultants who work specifically with residential clients too, which, they're still consultants. It's just they have a different audience than we do. Like, there's big name collectors who have a private art consultant, and not even big name collectors. But so, because I don't want to discourage, I'm sure some of the people listening to this might do beautiful nude sketches. Well, ArtForce is probably not going to sell a lot of those, but that doesn't mean that there aren't art consultants who will. So just know that there's different types of art consultants, some who are working more with a residential client, an individual, versus the spaces that we work with. So what we do have calls for artists that are on our website, and some of them are general calls. So it talks about how we work, what we're looking for, and then they can submit images, digital images with information. So of course, photography is important, that you're representing your work well, because you don't have to be in the Minneapolis area to work with us, although we support a lot of local artists, and a lot of our clients like to do that. We certainly don't specifically and exclusively work with local artists. And be very, pay attention to all the details. So the, size, medium, is it framed or unframed? And we typically, because we do have a framing component, we do everything from, as we say, inspiration to installation. So we work with the clients, we do the framing, we do the installation. Not all art consultants do that, but so we prefer to have work unframed, but some consultants would be looking for work framed. We also, you can send me images of work that are not available if they're good examples of your work and, representative of your work, as long as you indicate that, the piece is sold. Because in those early stages, as we're showing work to clients, we can just show examples of an artist's work, and we'll say it doesn't mean that these are the pieces that would end up in your space, but just how do you respond to this artist. A few things that are important to know, we have to cover our overhead and our expenses. So typically we do a keystone markup. So if we would buy a piece from you, say hypothetically for $1,000, we would sell it for $2,000. And consultants work differently. Some of them will bill a client their time and will just pass on the expense. But that's our model. So know that. Also know that because we're working with corporate clients, there is, most of them are, it's not a cash and carry, they're billed 30 days or sometimes even longer than that. So if we get the work in, we frame it, we install it, then the clock is ticking in terms of payment at installation. So it could be 60 days between the time that you drop the work off or send it to us or whatever, and the time that you're paid. And that's just part of the process. We wait to get paid, and then we pay the molding vendors, the artists, all of that. So that's something that you need to understand in working with a consultant. There is that time lag. Let's see, other things. I mean, a lot of it is basically, basic professionalism, but sometimes that falls by the wayside in terms of, response time, responding quickly, to requests, being thorough about the information that's provided. We may ask you for a specific project, so we might ask for a specific, we're looking for this color palette. I know your work, but we're looking for this color palette, or we're looking for, I'm just working on a project right now where we've got a couple of long corridors, and so we're looking for a series of pieces that are fairly large. So a bunch of 8 by 10 pieces is not going to work for us. And that's the other thing, is we typically place larger work or a series of pieces. So like I say, we don't place a lot of smaller images. So if that's what
the nature of your clientele.
Yes, and their spaces. Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm hearing a lot of things that I also keep repeating. So I just want to emphasize on a few things here that are very important. So first, you said photography is very important. When artists tell me where's the first place I should invest, I say in professional photos of your work, right? Mm-hmm. Because if you don't, and in today's world, I mean, some professional looking photos can be taken with an iPhone, but you need to take the time to do it properly. So lighting, right? And cropping, right? Mm-hmm. No one wants to see your living room in the back, or your studio in the back, and your image, your canvas tilted, right? So we want high quality where we can see if there's texture, if there's transparencies, right? Leslie and all other art consultants see hundreds of images every day. So if your image is unclear and it's not representative, she's not going to be sending it back to you and asking you to send her something better. She's just going to delete it. She has no time for that, right?
Right.
There's one thing, and those photographies, you're going to use them for your website. You're going to use them to reach out to art consultants like Leslie. You're going to use them on social media. That's the first thing you need to invest money in. So very important. The other thing I'm hearing is doing research to make sure that it's a good fit, right? So you talked about, some people's work artists' work might be better in the residential sector, others, and maybe more, like you said, the hospitality or with businesses. So really figuring out where your work would be a good fit, because then if you're doing that, you're helping Leslie, because that's a huge part of your job too, right?
Right. So because there's a lot of beautiful work that I probably am not going to place, and I can enjoy it, but it's not going to be a good fit for most of our clients.
So it's not a judgment on the art. So if you say thank you, but no, I cannot place it. And something also that is very important that you mentioned is artists need to understand what the business model of a art consultant is. The client is not the artist. The buyer, the business who is buying the art is the client. So Leslie's job is to get businesses to buy art. So she needs to fit in what they want, right? Not necessarily what the artist wants.
Right.
So it's not a commentary on your art, and it's your job to make sure as an artist that you're reaching out to people who you'll be able to serve with your work because it's a good fit. The other thing you talked about is professionalism, having a good reputation, because I'm guessing that for artists, it's great to have repeat business with you. So can you tell us maybe some mistakes that you see that artists are doing that are costing them maybe sales or costing them opportunities?
Yeah, so I think certainly, and we're all busy and we all have various things that we have going on, but oftentimes, in our business, our number one value is our clients. And if they are trying to do something quickly, we're going to try to help them accomplish that. Now, there's certain things that just can't happen. I mean, if they ask for a commission and we want it done tomorrow, that's not reasonable. But so, if we can get them information, if we can hear from artists, and so to be responsive is really important. Another thing that I've run across that's just came to mind that's kind of interesting is, and I know it's a dilemma for artists, is that I may come to an artist and say, wow, I think I can place this piece of yours that I know you have. And they'll say, well, that's slated for a show, so I don't know if I want to sell it. And so, there's that, and I understand the dilemma, because having shows can be important, and you need to have a body of work that's good for a show. But sometimes, we've run into situations where I could sell this for you, and artists have said, well, I can't sell it now because of this show, you could have it. And I don't know if that's a mistake or not. It's just something to be thinking about, how an artist is sharing their information or sharing, the work that they have, to say, well, I'm not even going to show you these pieces because they're going to go on a show. And then somebody is not thinking that they can have it, when it's like, well, no, I really don't want to sell it now. If you'll wait 6 months, you can have it. And clients don't usually work that way.
Yeah, and we're all humans, right, Leslie? So when you start having this back and forth with an artist, and it ends up that you could have made the sale and you're not making it, and now it takes you more time because now you need to find a new piece and a new artist, and time's running out. Next time opportunity knocks, not sure you're going to go to that artist. Am I right?
Right.
Another artist. Because last time you wasted a bunch of time and it didn't end up in a sale. So maybe that artist really isn't that hungry to make a sale. So a decision that you're making now might bite you later.
Yes. Yeah. And then also just kind of back with the professionalism to, like, we would rather have a piece that's unframed than see a piece that's framed not very well. And framing is really expensive. And so I would rather have an artist, and it can be difficult, with certain media, to like pastels and things, that it's hard to keep them nice if they're not framed sometimes, or there's certain media that make it more difficult. But I would rather have a piece unframed and see it that way, even though it should be framed, than to see it poorly framed. And then you're putting that expense into it anyway, the artist is, and that really doesn't make sense. So, do things that present things, again, back to the same as the photography, present things in the best way that you can present them. And there may be consultants who always want everything framed. I can't speak to that, but it can really, you can have a beautiful piece of art and you frame it poorly, and then it totally devalues the artwork itself. Even though you try to, block that out, the impression is that there isn't as much care, or it's not as good a piece as it really is.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you, because framing it's a business in itself, right?
Yes.
Artists, your job is to make it all about the art. Your job is to deliver the highest quality piece of art that you can create. You're not in the business of framing. So, and really, I remember when I was also selling, it was the same, exactly same thing that you're saying, Leslie. It was our job to frame it, because framing, there's also a matter of taste, a matter of context, right?
Yep.
You said earlier, so a certain client, you might go with a very big frame that goes with the architecture, that goes with the style of the space, right? And in another place, it might be a very, very fine frame that you almost don't see because of the lighting, because of the space, again, because of the taste of the client, right? So art is one thing, framing is completely something else. And one thing that you said, I think that will encourage artists not to do it, is the cost, right? Why are you incurring those costs? Like, you don't have to take on those costs, because it can even become a downside to it, because somebody might say, I really like this piece, but I hate the frame, right? I don't want that frame. And then you put a bunch of money in it, and the buyer doesn't want to pay for that frame because it doesn't fit what their vision is for their art collection.
Right.
So there's really no upside to it. And if the issue is conservation, then there's definitely other ways of doing it that are maybe temporary, and that will keep your piece safe. And because cheap framing is not good. And again, framing is a question of taste. What you like and what your buyer's going to like can be very, very different. Any other tips like that for artists that you think of?
Well, the one thing just to add on to that is that oftentimes if we're working in a corporate space, there's also, they want consistency with the framing.
Oh,
so
yeah, absolutely. It has to be.
More than, sometimes residentially, each piece is framed differently and, depends on the room. Whereas, in a hotel or in a corporate space, that's not always true, but I would say most of the time, there is a very consistent style with the framing. So if we got in 12 different pieces and they were all framed differently, that wouldn't fit so well.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of any others.
You also sell prints, like an artist that would maybe that works and prints their art, and that way you have multiples. Do you ever buy like multiples, like let's say for a hotel, that they would put the same print on different levels of the hotel or things like that?
Absolutely, yes. We do sell a lot of prints, and we do. We actually have high quality printers in our space. So we actually do print work here as well. So some of the artists that we work with, we sell their original work, but then we also sell print work of them, by them. And so yes, and that is a significant part of our business. So it's not just original art. We also sell prints, and there's some artists like screen prints, that there is that style of work that they really don't have originals. That's all they do is prints, like letterpress kind of printing. So yes, so prints as well as original work. We mainly do wall pieces, but we do sell sculpture also. But that's another thing that's been a change in these spaces. If you look at architecture and you look at interiors now, there's a lot of glass, which is a good thing. It's good to have natural light. That's a good thing for us, but that means there's fewer walls. There's a lot of monitors because everybody, has technology, and there's a lot of of wall space taken by monitors. And then if there's a lot of people do a lot of their own marketing on the walls too. And if you look at the example I often use is a bank. 20, 25 years ago, if you went into most banks, they would have artwork, fine artwork on the walls. Today, if you walk into most banks, they have a lot of marketing about their latest, loan or whatever. And so we're competing. Artists and consultants are competing for that space. And so that's why, so sometimes we are looking for new ways to, okay, how can we put art in the space? Is it a suspended piece, or is it a floor standing piece, or is it something that can be printed as a wallpaper, that besides the fine art, trying to be creative to incorporate artists and art work with these newer kind of realities about how these spaces are being constructed and what else is going into those spaces.
Oh, so that's super interesting, because I often hear like artists who do 3D sculptures or maybe digital or installation who think that there's no room in the market for them. And now we have proof that no, that it's kind of being innovative and finding new ways to getting your art seen, right? Other than the traditional canvas, right? Can be exciting. So artists, get out of your comfort zone and enjoy, creating work, because there is room for things that are different. That's great. Just quickly, you said something at the beginning. You said we're not like a gallery. We don't have like exclusivity with a group of artists. Do you work with artists that are represented with galleries, or do you have to be an independent artist to work with you?
It all depends on what agreements the artist has with galleries. I mean, there's some that still have some sort of gallery relationship who we work with, and there's others that are very exclusive. One of the reasons, well, there's a few reasons we don't do those sorts of arrangements. First of all, like I said, because we really want to find the best solutions for our clients, and so we don't want to put ourselves in too small of a box to just say, okay, you want a landscape? Well, we've got these 5 artists who do landscapes. We want to have more, or if we're working in another city and they say we'd really like to have artwork represented by local artists from our city, that we can reach out to those people rather than saying, well, we only work with people from Minneapolis or whatever that would be. But then also, it's an artist, if they're working with a gallery, and some gallery relationships work, but you're really hitching your wagon to think that the gallery is going to sell enough work of yours that you're going to be able to make whatever money you need to make or want to make or whatever. And to me, that doesn't necessarily seem fair to the artist and I know sometimes it does happen, so I'm not saying it doesn't, but as a director, I wouldn't want to say, I know that I'm going to sell whatever number it is, $30,000 worth of your work, 50,000, whatever, every year, because it all depends on what clients we have and what their needs are. So I think, I don't want to tie somebody down to that. That being said, there are definitely artists that we work with on a repeat basis, and we've worked with for years, because they are professional and because they do good work, quality work, and because their work fits with the general needs of the group of clients with whom we work.
Great, great. Wow, this is very, very valuable information. And I hope that the artists who are listening now have a better understanding of what it means to work with an art consultant. Because if you don't understand the work, right, of an art consultant, it's very difficult for you to offer pieces and engage with art consultants and be valuable to them, right? So we need to understand what art consultants do, what their responsibilities are, and to whom, so that we can, on our end as artists, serve and be of service, right, to art consultants and their clients. So today, really, that was very, very helpful. Before we go, Leslie, is there any resources that you recommend to artists who are working on selling their work that they could look up to help them with things we talked about today?
Resources in terms of learning more, or
well, maybe books or website that you know that you sometimes direct artists who are starting to sell their work?
Well, I mean, there are definitely there's sources of kind of avenues to sell work, like CodaWorks.com. They do calls for art, and they help place work, all over the world, all over the country.
Okay, can you repeat that website?
Yeah, so it's CodaWorks.com, CodaWorks.com, and they do all sorts of calls for art. They do a lot of marketing of different. They do a lot of like public art and sculptural art, but they certainly do wall pieces as well. And that's also a good source to see what other artists are doing.
Absolutely.
That's the site that comes to mind.
Well, that's great. That's great. Definitely something to look into, codeworks.com, because there's so much to be learned about how others are presenting their work also, and what's working on the art market right now, right? Because like everything else, there are trends. There are trends, right? There are trends in what the clients are looking for. There are trends in architecture, and then there are trends on what is a good fit. So I want to thank you for your time, Leslie. We were speaking with Leslie Palmer-Ross, art director at Artforce. Thank you so much for your time today. I'm sure all the artists will appreciate your generosity. And if you would like to know more about Artforce, well, look them up. Their website is amazing. There's so many interesting resources also on how I find you are really, like we said earlier, you're very committed to educating, right, people and businesses on the value of art. So you should download their resources that might even help you as artists to learn how to talk about the value of art, because Artforce has a bunch of free resources on their website about that. And if you think your work is a good fit, why not submit your work to Artforce? Would that be a good idea, Leslie?
Absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity.
Well, thanks for joining us. Have a great day.
You too.